Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop Fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
In just a matter of seconds, you're going to hear a classic episode of this show from back in the day when we called ourselves Movies We Like.
It took us a while to settle into the show's format, so you'll notice some differences as you listen to these episodes. For instance, it takes us a bit of time to actually get into the conversation about the movie. Things like that.
But we're still proud of the conversations about the movies themselves, and we think they're worth keeping in the library.
So enjoy these episodes from our back catalog. And you can become part of our Discord community, learn more about the show, and find out how you can become a supporting member at thenextreel.com.
So thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to The Next Reel. We appreciate your time and attention, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Is there a fourth wall in radio? In podcasting?
Hang on. Mr. Marconi? Yes, there's a fourth wall. He says there is a fourth wall, so shut up. Also, there was a giant update to Google Plus, and so you know what that means.
That means one more person might be using it now.
Oh, man, you must be sitting there. I was late tonight. I know that you were sitting there writing a script.
Oh, yes.
For this show.
Yes.
That was a witty retort. No, Andy. What it means is that I have once again started playing with Google Plus, and I'm still not posting our shows, but I did turn on a community for the next reel. I haven't made it public. You have to ask to be invited.
Oh.
So believe me, you're going to probably not get an invite because you're such a buzzkill.
That's awesome.
You have other duties. But anyway, so there is would anybody even care about a Google Plus community? Does anybody use it? There are people, the movies, like the Flick Chart guys, they have a giant community over on Google Plus.
Really?
Yes.
I wonder if they're the same people who use it on Facebook, or if they're two separate communities.
I don't know. Maybe it's just a lot of different people.
Wow.
I don't know.
They keep trying, don't they?
They do.
Yeah.
When you're a plucky upstart like Google,
right.
You're working like a startup. You don't have the resources to really pour into it. You've got to just do what you can. Pull all-nighters, right. Plucky upstart.
Yes.
Do we have anything else to say? Do we have any? I think we do. We've got a couple of blot spots.
We do have a couple of blot spots.
All right,
yes, we do.
You do one, I'll do the other. Which one do you want?
I'll take Totoro.
Okay. Well, then I should go first.
Go first.
All right. This is our dear friend of the show, Ben Lott. On the Blot Spot, he's writing in about Spectre, which we did obviously as a film board episode. The gang of thugs gathered to talk about the latest Bond film, Bond 24. And Ben writes, I cannot believe none of you guys mentioned how all caps boring this movie was. Spectre was so disappointing and was easily Daniel Craig's worst Bond film. Every single aspect of the aspect one of you said you liked, I was screaming at my phone saying, how could you like that? I've always wanted to share my 2 cents on the show, but I've never wished more that I could jump into the conversation than in this episode of the Film Board. I don't hate Spectre because it's Bond and I'm a Bond enthusiast, but I was absolutely let down.
Wow.
Well, let me tell you this. The reason, and I don't want to speak for anybody else, I apologize in advance, Ben. I actually like the movie more today than I did when I saw it. It has aged well on me. I did not think it was boring. The things that I was frustrated about, I was really frustrated about. I'm still frustrated about those things, but I did not think it was boring. And I don't think it was might have been at the bottom of my list of Daniel Craig films, but that doesn't mean that I hated it at all.
Yeah, I agree that it was the worst of Daniel Craig's films. I think, Ben, you and I are two of the Quantum of Solace lovers. So, but I mean, I did enjoy the film. I'm curious to see how it will be on rewatches. So
agree,
yeah, maybe I just didn't pick up on the boringness of it. It's like, films like Thunderball. I mean, it's still a great film, but man, just watching the underwater fight, that is like a boring Bond moment for me. It's just so tedious. So I'm curious to see how this one plays out, because I have a feeling everything in the desert base is going to end up just being in that boring bit. And so I'm curious to see how this one ends up holding up over time for me. Blot spot for Totoro. I struggled with My Neighbor Totoro because it's an adorable little film with sweet characters that I grew attached to, but nothing really happens to them. I kept waiting for the plot to kick in, but it was just a series of moments that didn't flow in any natural way. I'm just partial to a traditional narrative. I feel like I'm missing something, and perhaps it's merely the fact that I don't have a child's eyes to watch it through. Your rank 42 out of 210. My rank 132 out of 210. I'd be interested to hear how you guys chose these 3 films to represent Miyazaki, because a friend insists that Princess Mononoke and Spirited Away would be better options for me to watch first in order to acclimate to Miyazaki. Not that your selections should be framed for introducing a new viewer to the genre each time. I'm just curious.
Well, so you have to respond to that. How did we pick these 3?
Well, I think Lupin, we ended up adding kind of at the last minute, replacing a different one. I can't remember which one we had before. And I think it was really just, we thought it would be interesting to start at the beginning of his career and the end of his career, and then pick one in the middle. And Totoro was one that was just kind of always on the list. And so that's the one that we ended up sticking with. But yes, Mononoke, Spirited Away, definitely films worth talking about. I don't know about you, Pete, but I would love to come back to Miyazaki at another time and do some more of his films.
Absolutely. I think that's, if I've learned anything from this brief series, that I think that that is the lesson. I would love to finish it out. And it's so great that he's retired. Whew, we can actually catch up.
Yes, right. We don't have to keep adding new episodes over time.
Yeah. Should we tell the people where we're from?
Where are we from?
Hey, this is The Next Reel on rashpixel.fm. Everybody, I'm Pete Wright, and that over there is Andy Nelson.
Hi-ho!
And we spoil movies. Tonight on the show, the final in our series of the films of Hayao Miyazaki and his final film, The Wind Rises. Before we get into that, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com. Subscribe to the show on iTunes or follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel. And if you agree with us that the best romance is a romance set up by Werner Herzog, you'd better hit up The Next Reel's Instagram, #PonyPrize, #GuessTheMovieChallenge.
That's right. And this week, poor Stephen Smart is feeling a little under the weather. So that's okay, because Kendra Midmod83 hit it out of the park with the second image of The Sandlot. She was able to nail that image, figured out right away what it was, and now Kendra Midmod83 is entered to win the 2015 Pony Prize.
Now, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Kendra Midmod is a repeat victor.
I think that she is.
Oh, well done. Well done, indeed. And thank you for playing.
Absolutely.
Now, shall we do some trailers?
Let's do them.
Let me tell you, I am doing Gods of Egypt. Had you even heard of this film before I recommended the trailer this evening?
Yes, somebody else actually, another friend posted the trailer with some comments about what has happened to Alex Proyas. And so I had seen the trailer yesterday or the day before.
What has happened to Alex Proyas, Andy? What has happened to Alex Proyas?
He has gone downhill since knowing.
I would like to add to that list, what has happened to Gerard Butler? Even Gerard Butler.
Right.
And I have seen nothing else that Nikolai Coster-Waldau has done besides Game of Thrones. And I'm even willing to say, what has happened to Nikolai Coster-Waldau in Gods of Egypt?
No kidding.
This is a very simple premise. A common thief joins a mythical god on a quest through Egypt. Now, I recommend this trailer because even though I lampoon it a little bit, tomorrow is my birthday. And as you will know, as you may remember, my birthday is a national holiday, as is Andy's. And what we do when our birthdays come around is we go see movies all day. That's what you're supposed to do, right?
Hells to the yeah.
Yes. And so tomorrow is movie day. Now, obviously, Gods of Egypt is not going to be playing tomorrow, but if it was playing tomorrow, I would be seeing it because birthday movie day is made for Gods of Egypt.
I just want you to remember, Immortals was one of the movies that you saw on your birthday movie day.
I did.
Try to remember what you thought of Immortals.
It wasn't good, but I enjoyed that I was seeing it on my birthday because it's like a freebie. It's like it doesn't count. Do you know what I'm saying? When you go see movies on your birthday, you get to, it's like you never saw it at all. It's like your taste. It's a taste vacation. It's like Skittles for your brain.
It's like calories you eat on your birthday, right? Same thing.
They don't count. It's like that free Starbucks that they send you. I always get the thing, are you a member of, do you have a gold card?
No, I'm not. I got to be a member,
Andy,
yes.
Oh, God. See, now we don't speak the same language. When you have a gold card, they send you a free drink, any drink you want. So if you buy normal cheap drinks, I say that in quotes, every day to earn your regular free drinks, on this day you get to drink the most expensive drink ever at the Starbucks, and it doesn't count. That's Gods of Egypt. This movie looks terrible. Gerard Butler plays Set. Brendan Thwaites plays Beck. Nikolai Coster-Waldau plays Horus. And it really wouldn't be complete if he didn't end up in an eye patch.
No, exactly. Exactly. He's always missing something.
How did he get... Listen to this. How did he get this? Gerard Butler, Nikolai, Courtney and Abby Lee, Jeffrey Rush, Rufus Sewell, Chadwick Boseman. Chadwick Boseman!
I know, these are all people we like. I'll be honest. This looks terrible, but it is exactly the sort of movie that I would put on late at night and I would watch, and I would not be able to fall asleep because it's like that bad entertaining. And I would probably watch this and go, "Yep, that was bad," but I was entertained for 2 hours.
It's big and loud and lots of shiny. It is 300. It is Clash of the Titans and Wrath of the Titans. That's what it is.
And Immortals.
And Immortals. Yes, it is all of the above. There you go. What's yours?
Well, mine oddly also highlights a character's eyes.
Yeah, I don't even know what to make of this.
It's as if mine is Nikolai Coster-Waldau's character, centuries later, reincarnated in a young boy.
As a boy, yeah.
That's right. Mine is Midnight Special, Jeff Nichols' new film. This one I really don't know what to make of, but Jeff Nichols, I think that he's kind of been pretty good so far. I mean, Shotgun Stories was my favorite, but Take Shelter, Mud, liked those quite a bit. This is next on his roster, and this is the story of a father and son who go on the run after the dad learns his child possesses special powers. And it has something to do with his eyes, and the son goes around wearing swimming goggles all the time, and when he takes them off, his eyes glow blue and look like the Gods of Egypt character's eyes. Really strange. Joel Edgerton, Kirsten Dunst, Adam Driver, Michael Shannon, of course, he's a regular in Jeff's movies, and Sam Shepard, and it's just a great cast of characters here. And I just don't know what to make of the story. It looks kind of like one of these typical stories where these characters end up with another character who has this special power. The government wants that character because of the special power, and these people go on the run trying to protect that character. This looks like that sort of film. I don't know what to make of it, but it really piques my curiosity. This looks like something I would have loved in the 80s when I was growing up. And I hope it feels that way. I hope it ends up being that sort of film because it looks that way and I want it to be that. So Midnight Special, what did you think of it?
I liked it. I didn't know what to make of it. I thought it was not the movie that it ended up being as when the trailer began compared to when it ended. I didn't expect the whole Cyclops thing. I thought it was more a la Prisoners than a superhero story. But it ended up looking really interesting. It looked like it had a lot of heart. So I'm fascinated by it, and of course I will be there.
Yeah, March 18th, 2016. That's when this one opens. I will be there too. So we'll see how it is.
I'll see you there.
Sounds good.
Andy, I hope you youngsters appreciate extruded aluminum alloy. The Wind Rises, Andy.
Yes, it does.
This is 2000. It was technically really 2014. Who are we kidding?
Well, here it was.
Yeah.
If that's what you're
2013. 2013 in Japan and in LA for a week.
Right. The awards release.
Yeah. But otherwise, it was a 2014 wide release, The Wind Rises, from Hayao Miyazaki, his final film upon retirement.
It's a little confusing. The book, The Wind Has Risen, is really by Hori Tatsuo, is a book about a woman who has tuberculosis and is in a sanatorium. And that's really kind of what the book is about. He pulled a lot of the relationship story that we see in this film of Jiro and his relationship with Naoko. He really pulled kind of that element of that fictional story and put that fictional story into this story, and basically created this whole fictionalized element of Jiro Horikoshi's life. What he did with the manga is really kind of more based on the actual. Well, this is my understanding. It's more based on the actual Jiro and his work to develop these different planes. early in the development of air power for Japan.
For Japan, right.
And so he created this manga, which was originally published in some airplane magazines, and that wasn't necessarily tied to The Wind Has Risen so much. And then what he did when he ended up making this film, he kind of ended up blending those two stories together. And so he kind of created this biopic with a very fictional element going through it. But the manga, which that's we can put that in the show notes also, it's only available in Japanese right now, and I can only find it on Amazon, the Japanese Amazon. But it looks like the whole thing. It's interesting for anyone who's familiar with Miyazaki's films. Porco Rosso was a film that he made with a pilot who is basically what is it? What do you call it? Porcine?
Yeah,
like a pig-like character.
Yeah.
Jiro is very porcine as well. He's got a little pig nose and everything, and people were saying, what is he saying with that? But I guess Miyazaki often draws his characters, like he draws his self-portraits often with the pig nose. And I don't know if he just likes it that way or what. But anyway, Jiro, through this, is kind of that pig-nosed sort of character, which is kind of funny. But anyway, he creates very interesting looks for these characters that aren't necessarily human. And so yeah, he blended, long story short, he kind of blended those different stories to create the script for The Wind Rises.
Fascinating. You've already taught me something.
That's what I'm here for.
Well done. So anyhow, the result is this look at the life of Jiro Horikoshi, the man who designed Japanese fighter planes during World War II. It's funny to watch this film after watching the last two, and I think it mostly because it feels very much visually like we really have pulled the Lupin leap through time. Big giant leap from one building to another. We leap from there and we land on Totoro, and now we leap from there and land here. And you can see, I think, in the great contrast or evolution of the art of his. It's definitely a Miyazaki film, and yet to me, visually, it's a masterstroke. I mean, it feels so much like it capitalizes on everything he's learned. And I will just get it out at the outset. For me, I think of the three, this was my favorite to watch. As much as I've always loved Totoro, I mean, this was I was deeply moved by this film, and I was fascinated watching it with my kids. The first thing out of my daughter's mouth after it was definitely my favorite of the three.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah,
very
my son not so much.
Yeah. It's funny because my kids actually did a pretty good job watching it. I just don't know if they really got it or really understood what it was they were watching.
Yeah.
So that was very funny. I think it's just easier for them to watch an animated film and just kind of move along with it when it's kind of an adult story. And so they tapped into it. And, my son really taps into like the dreams and that element of it. Like that's something that he always gets excited about in movies, where you see kind of the story and then you see the dreams. That there's something that really, I think that he really connects to the dream world still. And so he really connected to that in this film. I still don't think he got it really.
Well, and this is an interesting film because the transition between dream and film timeline can be pretty subtle, or in some cases a little bit blurred. With some of the big visual elements that happen in waking life that look very dreamlike. So I even found myself thinking, I love the dream sequences, but I'm not entirely sure where we're dreaming.
Yeah, it was interesting seeing that blend. And this it is a very interesting film. It in Miyazaki's body of work, it doesn't feel as directly connected to many of his stories. Like you don't see as much of the kind of quirky characters and things like that to really kind of have that sense of his world. Mm-hmm. However, except for like at the beginning in the very first dream sequence with very young Jiro, when he's dreaming and he has that instance with his eyes where he's realizing that he's nearsighted and can't fly, and he has that the dream of that dark Zeppelin flying over with all the little, I don't know, Zeppelin vehicles hanging off of it with black kind of freaky figures.
Those were the Nazi hooligans.
That's the most Nazi hooligans, yes, but in the as when he was a kid, he was how old was he as a child?
Awfully young. He was probably 13, 14.
Yeah, which would have been 1915. So I can't imagine it was the Nazis.
No. I just like
you just like
Werner Herzog.
There you go. But it was that's really the only time you see that sort of character. Outside of that, it really is the dream sequences that kind of make it feel a little more Miyazaki-ish. The way that he kind of blends the dream world with kind of the real world, and I like that quite a bit. And there's a lot of nature too, and a lot of that sort of stuff. And he himself is a pacifist, and so I think a lot of his own philosophies and everything come through in this film more so than perhaps some of the fantastical elements that he has put forth in so many of his other films.
Well, that does get to an interesting point too, right? And that's part of the controversy of the film that I definitely want to talk about later. That his role as a pacifist and the controversy that sort of erupted as a result of him making this film, and what is the message of this film, and what is the foundation on which he stands to make it. It's an interesting film because it doesn't. It is as you say, that it's the most dreamlike. It's the most Miyazaki when it's in dreamland. It doesn't involve magic. It is the most, I think, even in spite of some of the dream stuff, it's definitely the most grounded of his films. It is the most straightforward narrative. It's the film that tells us it's a biopic. It's a fictionalized biopic of this guy who makes like hinges and stuff and designs planes, and yet moving through this narrative as we see him design the fantastic canvas and wood structures, as we see him testing his planes, as we see him dealing with the trials and the massive failures as his planes, end up crashing and burning and failing time and time again. I found myself really moved when we finally see the Zero, when we finally see this iconic shape, and we're introduced to this shape in a number of different, it's sort of teased out in a number of different ways. The most successful first flight for me is this beautiful, sweet sequence of a Zero as a paper airplane, one of the early drafts of the sequence. I think it's one of the most romantic sequences in the film, as we see him flying, Jiro flying this paper airplane below the balcony of his girlfriend at the time, I think, Naoko.
Right.
And you end up with this it's just the sweetest little piece. There's a bit of slapstick. There's a lot of falling into the bushes and him wearing the lady's hat, and they don't speak to one another. They're spending time trying to hide from dad, and it ends up being a sweet, clumsy thing. And yet what we know as an audience is that they are introducing in here the shape of an iconic war machine. And I found that brilliant storytelling. Yeah,
it's a very interesting way to tell this story and to kind of develop this. And it's we've kind of gone on about this with biopics before, but it's like the balance of when do you stay true to the story that you're telling of the actual historical person, and when do you fictionalize? And this is quite fictionalized, and all of the stuff with Naoko is completely fictionalized, which is quite interesting. And unless you know that, like, there's nothing in this film that's saying, oh, but a lot of this is fiction. So it's it's one of those things with these biopics. It's like, where is that line? It's so hard to say.
It's funny that you say that, though. I give this, I treat this film about as a historical document as I treat this, a roll of toilet paper. Right. I mean, this is a story about this iconic kind of vision of a man who and his view of art, and not the true story of the developer of these planes.
Right, but would you know that it's not the true story of the developer of these planes? Well, and I guess that's the thing. Like, is because the film is animated, does that already kind of pull you away from the true story and let you kind of take a more fanciful look at?
That was absolutely going to be my comment. That I think it already is free from the bonds of that requirement of sort of. I don't know if it would be some sort of a reveal or a title card or something that says most of this is not true. Right. But I don't think it had to, because I mean it's like an impressionist painting. I mean, it's just, here it is. We're giving you a sense of our experience of this sort of sense memory of this figure. And because it's animated, we don't feel the requirement for that level of disclosure.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing. Like I don't know if there's ever really an answer, and I don't think we've ever come to a real conclusion on this. Like, when is there a definitive line when you're making a biopic of when you can fictionalize and when you can't? I really enjoy this, and I agree. This feels. It almost feels like it has a touch of kind of that Kurosawa's dreams sort of element to it, where you have these beautiful dreams that really kind of take you into Jiro's head as he's kind of internalizing this idea of designing these perfect planes, because a plane in and of itself should be a thing of absolute beauty, and the way that they can glide through the air and just kind of cut through the clouds, it's just stunning to watch, balanced with the harsh realities of the difficulties of actually making them work, paired with what they ultimately end up getting used for in such destructive ways during World War II. There
are two elements to that too, which I found really interesting. The one is there's the contribution of the plane to the economic model of Japan, which was really struggling, and there is two, the contribution of the plane to the war effort, and those are two, I think, different things to think about.
Right. Yeah. Right. There's a lot of stuff that he's putting in here. I mean, he really is giving you a lot of meat to chew on as you watch this film. And I do really like it. I found that I like it more each time I watch it. I still put Totoro on top. I just feel Totoro is just really kind of a perfect animated film. This one I find myself really enjoying, and I'm glad that I've watched it several times now. This was my first time watching the English dub, which was interesting to hear. Joseph Gordon-Levitt and all these other Americans speaking these roles. I had just, for this one, I had actually gotten used to kind of hearing the Japanese voices, because
how jarring was that?
It was all, well, because it was also recent. This film is such a recent film that I had seen the Japanese several times, and seeing these guys do it, I guess it was fine. I thought they did a great job. I mean, I know it's incredibly difficult doing these dubs where you have to kind of take these English translations and then kind of try to work them to fit the mouth movements that have already been animated, which I think for the most part works pretty well. And actually, I mean, I feel like these guys did a great job. I mean, Joseph Gordon-Levitt does a great job as Jiro, John Krasinski as Honjo, Emily Blunt, Martin Short, Stanley Tucci, Mandy Patinkin, Werner Herzog was great to be in there. Actually, he's my favorite just because I think he was a perfect casting choice.
How did he get involved with it? Tell me there is some story. That's I could not find how did Werner Herzog end up doing the voice to this character, but there's got to be something.
He's just got that voice. I mean, if you listen to any of his recent documentaries, when he speaks, it just sounds so perfectly exactly what that character needed to be. It's like, God, he's just so right for that. It's so funny. And it's just like, but it's so funny because it's such a funny comparison, going from this character who is just so pleasing and kind to Jack Reacher when he's the Zek, and he's just like diabolical in that film. Oh, it's great.
He's so goofy in this film, and I still found myself, I mean, I was riveted. And he's a matchmaker, the matchmaker Werner Herzog.
That's right.
I thought that was so good.
Yes, it was.
Anyhow, so that was a treat. So this was one because, again, I've never seen the Japanese. This was one where I thought this is first of all, it's an A-list cast, and how funny would it be? This is I want to see a live action remake of this movie with these people in it. I just want to see Martin Short, riding around on the back of a little bike. I think that would be really fun. But it's I thought the performances were actually terrific. And some of them were beyond terrific. Emily Blunt, who I have become a huge fan of since Edge of Tomorrow. Now I think she is just terrific, versatile actress, and have loved kind of exploring more of her catalog. She I think plays just a beautiful, sweet, sensitive voice to this thing, and I mean, I just really felt the character. She just makes her just leap off stage or off the screen, particularly as she sort of deteriorates as tuberculosis kind of wreaks havoc on her. I loved it. I loved her accent. I thought it was just really impeccable across the board.
Yeah, no, she does a great job in this.
John Krasinski was great too. Joseph Gordon-Levitt was interesting because I have read some reviews that were not kind to his portrayal of Jiro. I actually thought he was great. The main criticism is that it lacked charisma or character.
Huh.
But in fact, that is one of the things that I think he really did a fantastic job doing. He made this character, I think, appropriately subdued. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. That's a good way to describe it. It feels like somebody who's, I feel like he's thinking a lot, I feel like that really came through the way that Joe Gallet played it.
And when did that happen? I always thought it was JGL.
I like Joe Gallet. It rolls off the tongue a lot easier.
Oh, it sure does, but it makes me feel like I should follow that with words like Peloton.
It makes me feel like I should spray some on before I go out to a party.
You should spray on your Joe Gallet.
Yes.
Or it's yogurt that you would suck from some sort of a stick or a tube. Have you had your Yogale? Billy, come get your Yogale. Yogale.
Oh, there's a tangent for you.
Good. Well done.
Yes, indeed. That's what I'm here for.
I love John Krasinski. Obviously, John Krasinski was the lovable guy, one of the many lovable guys from The Office and other great performances. I think he is a fun guy to watch. And his performance as Honjo, which is, he was a good friend. And I think the character was portrayed well in the film. Because as we watch the film, and this is, I think I came out with this during Totoro, where, when we talked about the drowning girl, how I expected something awful to happen because that's who I am and that's how I've been sort of enculturated. I expected there to be a betrayal of Honjo, that he would betray Jiro in the process. And I knew it was coming. I was convinced it was coming. And then the opportunity came when they saw his initial design of his bomber, Honjo's bomber, and Jiro said, well, I couldn't get this design into my plane, but maybe it would fit well in yours. It was a redesign of the screws and the hatch for the access ports on the wings, and I expected Honjo to say, no, I'm not going to do it, and then to do it anyway and betray his friend and take all the credit. But he didn't do it. It was such a sweet, of course he wouldn't do it. Of course, it's a Miyazaki film. There is no betrayal like that. It just doesn't happen. And it ended up being just the sweet reward of, yeah, man, I'm not going to do this because it needs to go on your plane first. I'll use it on my next design, but the first time it's used needs to be on your plane. And that is, I would do that for you, Andy.
Ditto, man.
Anyway, I love the way that character was written. It ended up fitting just perfectly what I needed to see, even if it isn't what I expected.
That's right. And, we should say Hideaki Anno did Jiro in the Japanese version. And he's the interesting thing about him is he is himself a director and animator also, in addition to being an actor. And actually, he is best known for his part in creating the anime series Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Oh, I know that.
Yeah. So that's kind of more what he's well known for. Although, interestingly, he had actually worked with Miyazaki back in Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind back in '84 when they needed an animator. And so he came on board to kind of help with, and you know, he was pretty young at the time, and he came on to help with some of the big complicated scenes at the end. And so that kind of helped kind of really give him a start and got him going. And that spurred on Evangelion, and then from there he kind of went on. But he's done a lot of directing and writing, and aside from animating things, and then doing some voice acting. And he's been doing voice acting off and on since the '80s. So he's kind of all over the place. But yeah, I remember liking him quite a bit as Jiro also. Now that I've seen Jogalay's performance, I almost want to go back to Hideaki's performance and look at it and see if it also had kind of that same read that we were just talking about, where it kind of had that sense
some introspective
of exactly,
bit, yeah.
Exactly.
Who else really stood out to you from by comparison? Since I haven't seen the Japanese, who else really gets you? Because there are some obviously some names that really jump out at me. Jun Kunimura leapt right out at me as the voice of Hattori, who has been in a lot of stuff that we know him for. But who else did you find was a real highlight in the Japanese performance?
I wish I could remember more specifically. It's just, because I had seen this one, it's like, gosh, I can't remember. And so I really want to go back and kind of rewatch them, just to kind of get that voice back in my head. But I do remember liking the voices in that film. Miori Takamoto did the voice of Naoko. Hidetoshi Nishijima did Kiro Hanjo, and they were all great. Interestingly, Stephen Alpert did the voice of Castor, who is the fun little Werner Herzog character, and he's actually an American who came on to play that German character. And he was actually on the board of directors for Studio Ghibli, and he had actually worked for Walt Disney Studios. And when this film came out, I guess they had kind of asked him to do this voice, and it was the first time he had ever actually done a voice in a film. So it's kind of fun to kind of throw him in. It's just so funny that they, for the Japanese version, they cast an American to play the German, which just seems so odd that they didn't just cast a German to begin with. And then it's like, well, if they already cast American, why didn't they just keep him? I mean, I love that they put Werner Herzog in, but it's just like they already had this guy's voice. Why not just keep it?
The design of the thing, I think, also one of the things we talked about over the last couple of weeks is just the wonderful real international feel of the artistry in this thing, the character design. They kind of span the globe, where you have Naoko's father, who is definitely, I don't know, he strikes me as a typically American looking face. He has a great big, thick, Americanized kind of mustache, but of course he's wearing kind of his evening kimono and those wooden shoes, and looks a little bit ridiculous to my eye. And then, of course, we have then the Hattori, played in the English dub by Martin Short. He's the big boss, and he ends up looking more like a cross between I can't think of the character name. It's maybe a Buster Keaton, kind of a Charlie Chaplin look, sort of European. But who's the short guy with the bull head? Maybe I'm thinking of a character in Dick Tracy.
You're thinking of like
Flathead. What's his name? Flathead
yeah.
Riley. I can't think of his name, but anyway, he has this really funny kind of European look, lampooned European look, and wearing quite dapper clothes out of of the period.
That's funny because to me he seems more typically Japanese.
Yeah, his face is Japanese, but it's just his head design and his wear and his but his facial design, I think you're right, is pretty Japanese. His eyes in particular end up being the most sort of stereotypically anime for the angry boss.
Yes, and then we can't forget the Italian.
Yes, the Italian, who does look plum Italian.
Right. Yeah, Caproni, I think, is a really interesting character in this film. And actually, I kept thinking that there was some strange... I couldn't figure out if it was intentional, but of Naoko's father had almost a Caproni-esque feel to him sometimes. It's like, I wonder if they're doing that on purpose to somehow tie his dreams to her world. And I couldn't quite place that, but it was definitely noticeable.
Well, it was noticeable. I mean, in one respect, it's it's Obi-Wan. It's his Obi-Wan Kenobi character, right? It's the guy. He's the guy who comes to him when he needs him the most, even though nobody else can see him, right?
Right.
And so what we have here is this guy who's leading him through this world and giving him these designs in the dream world, and then when he's in the real world, he has this sort of sensate grounding him to reality and to his relationships. And those two things come together in the final dream as Caproni walks him up the hill, and we get to witness her kind of evaporating. Right, and she dies, and so that's her. To me, that was very much the paternal figure allowing him to witness her transition into another place.
Yeah, although I feel like she had already died.
Well, okay, so that was him letting her go.
Yeah, I felt like it was kind of right, exactly. That's what I felt it was, because I feel like she dies. He's watching that final test of the plane
while she's having that hemorrhage.
Right, and she's kind of left the house and is going back up to the sanatorium. And while he's watching the test, all of a sudden the wind rises and he turns and all the sound drops out and he's kind of looking around. And to me, that's like him sensing her. It's it's that thing that people always say, I could sense her soul leave or whatever. That's what I felt happened right there. It's kind of like her soul blew the wind through him, and kind of he knew that she had died at that point. And then he connected with her in the dream again. That's kind of the final dream we see of him with his planes, where we see just all of the masses of the planes up in the sky, and then also her. And it's almost a chance for him to acknowledge the beauty of all these things in his life, right? He's got these beautiful planes that he had created, and then he has her, and he kind of is saying goodbye to her and saying goodbye to kind of the dream of what the planes, the idea of what the planes could be in the dream, and that kind of like powerful beauty that they are, knowing that in the real world they're all, as he says, they all went off to fight and none of them came back.
Yeah, that was pretty haunting. It was one of the most haunting visual elements of the film, although certainly not the most impressionable one for me. The biggest one for me was the earthquake that hit Tokyo and while he was on the train. That was a particularly jarring sequence around here.
Well, and it's so sudden. And I think that's why, because it comes out of nowhere. You're certainly not expecting anything like that. And wham, it just hits and it just devastates everything. It really throws you for a loop.
It does. The way it throws you for a loop, too. And I don't have the language to describe what is going on in the animation here, but something changes. Do you know what I mean? It didn't feel... I mean, it obviously wasn't sort of computerized, but it's pretty close to that same feeling I get.
Are you talking specifically about the actual moment when the earthquake hits, when you see the shock wave ripple across? And
we get a few moments like that. There are a few moments where the scale gets all funky when you're flying low over the ground, and suddenly the way the world is rolling up underneath you starts to look a little bit funky. It looks a little bit dreamlike, but the wave in particular here, I thought was visually, it was really beautiful and just out of character enough in the film that I think man, it hit us hard.
The other thing that I think really kind of makes me focus on that moment, and it makes it really stand out, is because of the sound design that Miyazaki chose to use in this film. And my understanding, this is something that he's been wanting to do, and it's just the only thing that this was the first time that he was able to make it happen. But for the sound design, he actually wanted to use humans making the sound effects for a lot of the things that happen in here. The wind, the earthquake, the train engine. It's
plane
people,
engines.
Yeah, plane engines. It's actually people making noises into the microphone as opposed to what you would consider kind of traditional sound effects. Sometimes they don't work so well, and I notice them every time because I'm like, gosh, that sounds so weird. It sounds like a person making like chug, 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 or whatever, but sometimes it's really interesting. And the earthquake one really stands out because of the way it hits. It's not like this intense rumbly sort of sound. It's almost like this like whoosh sort of sound. It's like the way that it hits. It's like, oh, and then it just all of a sudden hit. And I actually really end up liking that. I find that it works in a very jarring way in that particular instance.
It's also the first time I think we see the wind as the betrayer. Up to that point, we've seen the wind in dreams. We've seen the wind, as the accomplice. The wind is the thing that helps to lift our dreams. Or if our dreams are these giant machines that we want to soar skyward, then we need the assistance of the wind to help us get there. And it's always kind of a partner. And in this case, when the earthquake hits and the fires begin to spread, we see that the wind is also a demon. The wind is also this thing that will betray us, and it will, if we're not kind and careful, it will turn on us and destroy, and it will aid the other party, or that the wind in fact has no allegiance, and that we sort of obey its whimsy. And so I thought that was really interesting. That was something that we sort of bandied about around here as for a film that is about wind, for a film that partners wind with these designers as a key tool in their work. It is also such a dangerous force.
Well, and a key tool connecting Jiro and Naoko. I mean, that's how they meet. The wind whips his hat off and she grabs it.
Right.
And that's kind of the connecting force. And like we just said, that is kind of the moment when she dies. That is the force that is kind of connecting the two of them together. But at the same time, it does have a very yin-yang feel, because it brings them together, and also it is the element that signals the end of their relationship when she dies, and he senses it because of the wind. And just like you said, it's also that yin-yang, the power of flight, but also the power of destruction. So it's great how it does represent really both sides of all of that.
Yeah, and I think we've seen him play with wind in a number of his films, but in the films that we've talked about, I don't have a real sense memory of wind in Cagliostro. Am I misremembering that?
I don't think it's a big thing, but I feel like there are enough nature shots all throughout all of the films where I really enjoy watching how Miyazaki ends up directing nature, and any still shots of just kind of you're looking at nature or beauty, or even moving shots, it doesn't matter, but the way that he works it becomes very poetic. And I really enjoy in this film watching how they animate like the wind rippling the grass in fields, which I did notice in Totoro as well. And I can't remember, I do feel like there were scenes, like some nice wide shots with nature and stuff in Castle of Cagliostro, yet I can't quite pinpoint if they had the wind animated in those or not.
Yeah, I don't think so. What I remember, the sense memory I have of Cagliostro is really the idea of how nature and sort of man-made structure interact, and how nature, it ends up overtaking so many of these man-made structures. It's sort of that helplessness of all of us. We're only here for a little while, and look what nature will do. if we turn our backs. And that certainly is a connecting thread, back to this, all the way through to this film. Look what nature will do if you turn your back for just a second.
Right.
It's an extremely powerful force. And that is a central sort of theme of Totoro too, is this, this is a spirit of the woods. It is big and it is powerful and it can fly and carry you and send you places on a psychedelic cat bus, but, and ultimately it's very sweet, but it's helping you deal with some very challenging lessons, and look what happens when you turn your back. Suddenly your mom's in the hospital.
Yeah.
So let's just briefly about this controversy. We've talked a little bit about Miyazaki as a pacifist. You mentioned that earlier, and that ends up being the central tenet of this controversy around this particular film, where here he is as a pacifist and has made this film, what others have said, and I'm pulling this from Wikipedia, a flattering film about a man who built killing machines.
I don't see why you have to blame the filmmaker on telling an interesting story. I don't get a sense from watching this film that it is a film, kind of a pro-Japanese war propaganda sort of film. I don't see that here. I see very clearly these conversations between Jiro and this Italian airplane designer, Caproni, in his dreams about kind of the power of planes and the beauty of what they can be in their dreams, yet it's not something that can really ever be achieved in reality, particularly when the powers that be want to use these as tools of war.
And that's what I think is the central message for me too. It's that, the thesis of the film is planes are elusive, beautiful creatures that we send sailing into the sky, and the people who make them and fly them are beautiful, powerful creatures in their own right. And the tragedy, if there is a tragedy in this film beyond the fact that there was such a destructive war in itself, is the character tragedy that in Jiro's struggle to create such beautiful creatures of the sky, he ended up selling himself out, I think, unconsciously, to the war machine. Because he so deeply wanted to do this good work. And, I think there's an argument to be made that he didn't know he was, actively creating war machines at the time. He just was motivated and obsessed with moving these planes skyward.
Yeah, and it's tricky to say how much of that really is Miyazaki's interpretation of Jiro Horikoshi, or how much of that is really in Jiro's story. Even reading about Jiro, it sounds like he was pretty tied to the military and obviously the build up toward the war. However, he opposed, from what I've read, he opposed it mostly because he saw it as futile, not necessarily because he didn't agree with war. It just seems like he felt that the U.S. was such a strong power that Japan never would be able to stand up to it. And that to me seems like kind of his opinion as to why he felt like this was a foolish thing to do, rather than pacifistic sort of opinion. So I feel like there might be some Miyazaki spin on that, and that could be why people were attacking him.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely Miyazaki spin. And I think this gets back to your point about the sort of fabulism of the biopic, right?
Right.
This is definitely Miyazaki using this guy as a tool to tell his story and make good on his agenda as a pacifist. He is using this guy and retconning his life story to make him somebody who appears to be betrayed by his own obsession. I think that to me is abundantly clear.
Right. I don't know. I enjoy what Miyazaki's doing here. I really think that he's making kind of a very profound film. I think it's trickier, or I should say, I think it's easier for us to kind of look at this now, especially not looking at this back in like the 1940s or 50s, and this particular story, and finding so much of this and what he's saying in this film. from what I've read, most of the criticism has come from Japanese voices, and that seems to be kind of the primary driving force. People who, were more connected to a lot of these things that had happened and may be more specifically opinionated as to these kind of, I guess you could say from their perspective, falsehoods, creating this kind of a heroic character out of somebody who did build war tools.
Yeah, good or bad, he is a genuine Japanese historical figure, and to do this to him, I can see how that may have consequences if you have more of a cultural understanding of what was going on there.
Right.
Yeah.
So it is, I mean, I think he did walk a very tricky line telling this story. I think that he did make a great film, but looking at it from the perspective of certain people, I can see very easily how they would be offended. And, I could see them saying, well, why couldn't he just tell a story that like he told that's just fictional and it's not necessarily tied to Japanese and their role in World War II.
Yeah, I don't know what I think about that.
I don't either. But it's I find it very interesting, and I think this is just it's an interesting debate. I think that I don't think there is an easy answer. I don't think there's really going to be a perspective that is going to settle this whole thing. I just think it's very interesting that this is how he chose to tell the story, and I can't argue that the people who see the problems with it I can't argue that they're wrong.
Yeah, no, I can't either. I think this goes to one of Miyazaki's, responses, which is, children deserve to be introduced to worlds that they know nothing about. And for much of his filmmaking career, he was doing that through introducing children to the worlds of his dreams. But that, in this case, we now have an example of introducing kids to this world of, if not explicitly factual, certainly thematically accurate vision of war and the horrors of war and what it means to truly embrace violence, whether you're doing it through a response to a natural disaster or you're doing it through a response to a mechanical disaster. I think it ends up being a really powerful story and certainly a unique one. In the context of what we normally expect from animated films.
Yes, absolutely. Although, I will say, the Studio Ghibli, this really is a very interesting companion film to the film that was released with My Neighbor Totoro that I mentioned last week, Grave of the Fireflies, another World War II film told from the perspective of two children who are left basically by themselves because their family is killed when the nuclear bomb is dropped. Very powerful, touching film that pairs really nicely with this one, and it's interesting that they both come from Studio Ghibli.
What else do you have on your list?
I completely forgot to bring this up last week, but I just can't even believe I did. But Joe Hisaishi did the score for this film. Beautiful, beautiful score. I love the Italian touch that he has kind of throughout the music. It just is beautiful. It works so nicely in this film. And his music for Totoro was great too. He's one of my 10 J's of the film composing, as I've mentioned before. And I think that what he brings to the table here is perfect, a perfect tone. I think that going the direction of kind of tying the Italian feel to the music really lends to the dream quality and kind of the power of Jiro's dreams in the film.
Or do you feel better?
I feel better now that
you got him. I know you were really worried last week.
I couldn't believe that I didn't bring it up. So
I'm proud of you. I'm glad you made a note.
Yes. Phew. Got that off my chest.
Anything else hot?
The only other thing, last week you had mentioned that Miyazaki never wanted to do a sequel.
Oh, yes.
Interestingly,
yes.
And I didn't know this, but he actually, after the release of Ponyo, he wanted to do a sequel to Ponyo. He wanted to do Ponyo on the Cliff by the Sea 2, but Toshio Suzuki, who he's worked with before, said, let's adapt this manga that you did. and let's make that. And initially Miyazaki's like, no, that's not something that kids would like. But then, like you said, everybody convinced him that it is something that would be great to do. And, that's when he said, children should be exposed to this sort of thing. And I think that's a fantastic direction to go with. As much as I enjoy Ponyo, I don't know if I needed a sequel to that. And I feel like I am more rewarded by having this in its existence.
I agree. I'm so glad you brought that up. I read that and I got so excited about it. I did not know that either. Let's look at that. It's a terrible name for a sequel.
Well, that's what the first one's called.
I know. That was a terrible name, too. Adding a 2 to it doesn't make it any better.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
How did it do? It's a pretty recent film. It had a very big release in Japan and a good one here.
And it was very well received. I mean, it got an Academy Award nomination for Best Animated Feature, Golden Globe. He won the award for writing in an animated feature production at the Annie Awards. Joe Hisaishi got a Japanese Academy Award for the best score. It was received really, really well, and I think it's a testament to Miyazaki and his work that doing a film like this does end up getting received so well. The budget on this was definitely higher. It was $30 million, and it ended up grossing here in the U.S. About $5.2 million. Not huge. But, I think pretty strong for a foreign animated film. But internationally, and from what I've read, this international number is actually just the Japanese box office. 131,000, or it was 131 million. So it did really well over in Japan. That made for a total adjusted profit per finished minute of about $845,000 per finished minute.
Well, I think it's probably time for us to rank it.
Let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel, and if you don't have an account already, sign up for one, and then you should start ranking our films, and then we should compare. So like us and friend us and follow us, and we'll follow you back, and we'll just see what happens.
All right, The Wind Rises, or Kind Hearts and Coronets?
I think The Wind Rises for me.
Yep, I'm Wind Rises here.
All right.
The Wind Rises or Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind? Ooh.
They scratch this similar itch.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I'm Eternal Sunshine here.
Okay.
Are you giving in on that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that sets us up so we're not going to be ranking it against Totoro.
No.
Which is unfortunate because I would definitely put this above Totoro. Well,
I'm sorry. It's not gonna get there now.
And you suck.
The Wind Rises or Sunshine?
It's a freshness thing. So today I would say Wind Rises, but also the next film I put on, if that's the choice, would be Sunshine.
This one, I would actually do The Wind Rises, and I think I would do it because of the third act. I think I've worked through my issues with the third act in Sunshine, but I still will end up cringing a little bit when it rolls around. Whereas The Wind Rises, I don't ever get as excited as I do with like the first 2/3 of Sunshine, which I just think are just wonderful sci-fi, just amazing stuff.
Yeah, true.
But I think The Wind Rises has a consistent bar that it's achieving pretty much through its duration.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
yeah,
there you go.
I'm with you.
All right. The Wind Rises are about a boy. I am about a boy.
I'll be about a boy.
Okay. The Wind Rises or Force Majeure?
That was a good movie.
It was.
Force Majeure.
I definitely liked it.
Poor Dad. What a dummy. Wow. Like I might have to go Force Majeure.
Really? I'm Wind Rises here.
Okay. I'll be Wind Rises. I'm non-committal.
You're pretty, yeah. You are pretty non-committal. The Wind Rises Or The Prestige. I haven't seen
The
that pop
Prestige.
out in a while. Yeah, absolutely. The Prestige. The Wind Rises or The Abyss. I'm definitely The Abyss. Absolutely. The Wind Rises or Bong Joon-ho's Mother. Not the movie. This is his actual mother.
This is his actual mother.
I'm Mother, for sure.
Yeah, I'm Mother, too.
That was a really strong film.
That was great.
That leaves us at number 72 out of 211.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I definitely think it's pretty good.
Wow, where was Eternal Sunshine?
Eternal Sunshine is 53. So you're pretty good on your guess there.
Not bad.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I feel good about that ranking, actually. That feels like a good place for it, given the kinds of movies that we have in that top 100. And I really hope, speaking of scratching an itch, I hope this one comes back and helps The Good Ben Lot with more of a narrative structure. And less
connecting
of
a little bit more with...
Yeah, less of a requirement to have a kid's eyes
right.
To watch these with. And I don't mean to actually take a child's eyes.
No, that would be
strange.
Probably problematic for him with the legal system.
Yes, well, Yes. What's your Letterboxd?
My Letterboxd, and this one I think is 3.5. 3.5 stars out of 5.
No, that's too low. This is a solid 4-star movie for me.
Okay, that's a good ranking.
Yeah, no, do your little calculus.
Well, it's 3.75. So it'll round up to 4.
Well, you did that awfully fast, Mr. Show-Off Mathematician. Look. Mr. Leibniz is in the building. All right, where do we go from here? We're changing series. Actually, we've got a little break.
We do. We're going to be doing our 6th of our Listener's Choice episodes. This is Diego Luis Contreras' episode of Luis Buñuel's Viridiana.
Oh, I'm excited for this. You haven't seen it?
I haven't seen it. I haven't watched it yet. I'm going to hopefully be catching it real soon here, and I definitely look forward to seeing it. I have seen very few of Buñuel's films. Just a couple of his early shorts, really, and so I'm excited to see it. I will say I'm a little nervous. Surrealism isn't always my thing. Mm-hmm. I don't know how surreal this one is going to be, but I'm definitely wanting to give it a chance and check it out because I really have heard nothing but good things about this film, except from the Catholic Church that I believe banned this film for a while.
Except for that.
Except for them.
Well, I am excited about it too. I'm with you. Surrealism is not usually my bag, but I just love that this was recommended for us, and I'm excited to see what we come up with. Who knows what we'll come up with, and take it from there. So that's it.
Absolutely.
I'm done. I gotta go to bed.
All right. I'm going to go sneak into my kids' rooms and make some airplane noises with my mouth and see if I can get them to have some fanciful dreams of flying.
Offensive and dull, insult to injury.
Movie Tone News.
As an intense Miyazaki lover, I have to say this film is a major disappointment in many ways. Miyazaki's idolatry of a weapon designer in a war of aggression and genocide Japan has yet to apologize for is gross. The whitewashing continues as Jiro visits the Luftwaffe and not a single swastika can be seen. There is some mention of people being pulled from their homes in Germany, but they are not named. Miyazaki's unusually strong and amazing female characters are completely absent, with Jiro's wife laying around sick and passive the entire movie, while the boys have adventures. Worst of all, though, is that this film is boring. It was hard for me to be offended by it, as I was stifling yawn after yawn. It's long and it's pointless. Jiro is just not an interesting guy, and watching him struggle with one failed design after another offers little high drama. The only beauty in it is seeing pre-war Japan in such pre-industrial shambles. pulling Jiro's designs onto the tarmac with Buffalo and marveling at how they could become such an unbelievable power so quickly. Okay.
I like that last point.
I do. Swastikas, really? I think we may have seen different movies.
Well, mine, by Martina, says, content not suitable for anyone, but animation is brilliant. 1 star. Okay, don't get me started. This film condoned a woman on her deathbed unable to breathe, and she is portrayed as a charming individual who is easygoing as her brainless, awful, neglectful, selfish husband asks her if he can smoke, and as she is dying unable to breathe. And more than once. I'm sorry, but this movie needs to be banned for content. It's too bad because the animation is brilliant. We didn't bring up the smoking.
We didn't bring up the smoking. There is a ton of smoking in this movie.
There is a lot of smoking.
Oh, my goodness, yes. A ton of smoking. Yes. I found that interesting, being a movie that was made in 2012, 13, that there was quite so much smoking. It definitely was a nod to the times. There was a lot of smoking in the time. And there is still, I think, a lot of smoking across Asia.
I think that it's I think it's just kind of like Mad Men. It's pointing out something that existed quite a bit back then. Right. Doctors smoked. I mean, people didn't look at it as harmful an activity as people do now.
I think that the more puzzling comment is this film condoned a woman on her deathbed unable to breathe. Condoned, I don't think means what you think it means.
I don't think so either.
These have been infuriating Amazon reviews, Andy. Infuriating. Thanks for nothing, dear. Amazon. Nothing.
The movie we're talking about this time is The Wind Rises by Hayao Miyazaki. It was about a man who wanted to build an airplane, like the perfect airplane, and have it not be used for war. And his wife died. It was sad.
What did you think about the movie with Jiro, who made the airplanes?
Awesome.
Do you really remember it?
No. I thought that it was beautiful. After the earthquake, there was beautiful scenes and green grass and blue skies and dark forests.
We watched a movie about a boy who dreamed of making airplanes. You remember he would have the dreams where he would meet that other guy in his dreams and they would look at all those cool airplanes with 6 wings and they could carry all sorts of people that landed on the water and everything. You remember that movie? Mm-hmm. And he wanted to build those planes? You remember that? Mm-hmm. What happened in the movie?
I don't know. There was this guy named Jiro, and he was in love with Naoko. He was a plane idea person. Planist?
A planist? That's pretty good.
Aeronautical engineer. When one boy braked and it fell into the water with no people in it.
Yeah.
Just the flight.
You remember that part?
Yeah, funny.
It was funny.
Yeah, all the war stuff I didn't really get, but it was fun to watch. His dream was about making flying planes, and he really wanted to make planes and fly planes. So he went to school in Japan, and then they told him to go to another city in Japan and start working on planes. It was about a boy who had an airplane and in his dream, and he crashed into a person when it was hanging from an airplane, a bad airplane, and was going to fight it, and then he just fell down without just a dream. They sent him to Germany to start working on planes, and he was surprised.
What was he surprised about?
He didn't. Well, he knew a lot about planes, but he was surprised because they had never actually let him go someplace.
It was scary.
Why?
And there was a lot of fire.
Mm-hmm.
And why are train tracks built up on hills like that? Seems like all of the train tracks were up high on a hill. Feels like every time you have to get on a train, you're running uphill. It's really hard.
In Humanities, I read an article, and it sounded just like what happened during the earthquake.
The first one he made, they were used for fighting. Like, they were army planes. I think they could be used differently. He could make one, and like the person who used them say, "Be careful. This is one I made, and I don't want it to get broken." So he could have said that, and it wouldn't have gotten broken.
And the Italian guy, his voice is really weird. It's like, it's like, Mamma Mia, like that.
Airplanes are beautiful, he said, and they should never be used for fighting.
Can you tell me the sounds that the airplanes made when they would take off? And what would they sound like when they crashed? What did it sound like when the earthquake happened?
This one was definitely the most real. Like, I think because they put real life events in there, and nothing was quite as impossible as the castle of whatever it was. And the wind rises, it was all possible. Like, everything they did was not, there was no magic.
The animation, I think, from all of his Hayao Miyazaki's films, I think this was the best one. Castle of Cagliostro and My Neighbor Totoro were pretty good. I just didn't like, in My Neighbor Totoro, I didn't like how his belly was like all fat. I think they could make it skinnier and like not as furry.
The one that I would want to watch the most is Totoro. Lots of action and happiness and cute little Totoros. I like watching Totoro more than this one because it's more interesting. What if all the movies, they had like little Totoros walking everywhere?
May, when she gets mad, her ponytails get all the way to the top of her head. When Jiro got mad, all his hair did was like boom. Their hair was kind of a character. It had a mind of its own.
Yeah, I feel like the earthquake is real. It was a little scary, but I got through it.
I liked the part in the beginning where he was dreaming about that thing with the plane that was like bird wings. That was really cool. I also liked it when he was laying on the roof with his sister. And I liked all of his dreams. And I really liked his wife. That was a good thing to have in the movie.
Why?
It made the movie more interesting. That his wife had this horrible disease and died in the end. That was really interesting.
If you make something like beautiful but too beautiful, it might get ruined and you'll be super sad. But if you make something that was like that you care about but not that much, it doesn't really matter.
Standing on a wing of a plane, scary. The wind would just blow you back.
If he knew what he was doing, then maybe he would have tried to convince people that they shouldn't have done it.
A flying door. You don't see that every day.
You liked that line quite a bit, huh?
Yeah, it was funny.
Yeah.
My favorite part was when Naoko left the building of her hospital. And I thought that was super brave. Like, she had a disease and she was leaving. If I did that, I would get super sick. 'Cause, like, more sick.
Sponge Cake, how do you stay alive?
I think that this movie was targeted at kids my age or older because there was like tuberculosis, and they were building airplanes, which really, I think, when I was Nick's age, didn't seem very interesting to me. Like, airplanes were just another thing that was there, and building them was like, ugh, that's really far away and behind us.
How do you make a plane fly? What happened to those people that were flying, testing the planes? They must be very brave, but, like, did they survive or something?
The lesson is, like, don't make stuff too beautiful, or else it'll get ruined.
Yes, this movie was definitely more mature.
It would take a lot of guts to do that.
And so I kind of feel like, good job, you tried to protect your country. And also, really? Why would you do that?
I would recommend The Wind Rises to other kids, because I think it was like a good animation, and it would be good for the people who liked both the Castle of Cagliostro and My Neighbor Totoro. I think they would really like that.
The fact that they made up some of the history doesn't really change my opinion of the movie. It changed my opinion of the people who made the movie, but the movie in general was great.
I liked the guy that was from Germany. He helped him, and his face looked like he had hope, and he relied on people that helped him.
It was a really good movie because it taught so much about people in general.
I think it might be like a more mature movie, because like 1 or 2 year olds maybe not, but I think from 3 and up, I think they would really like it.
You think The Wind Rises is suitable for 3 and up?
Yeah.
All right.
Because there's like not as good as like other movies, like grown-up movies. Mm-hmm. This isn't a grown-up movie, and it's not a little kids movie. It's like right in the middle.
It is hard to believe we have been having in-depth conversations about movies since 2011.
You are telling me. Producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you, and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
Season 5 had some great adaptations, like our Meryl Streep Oscar-nominated performances series. We covered adaptations like Kramer vs. Kramer, Sophie's Choice, and The French Lieutenant's Woman.
It's a real Sophie's Choice between those books. You see what I did there?
Yeah. And I don't think it's quite at the level of a real Sophie's Choice.
We also did Snowpiercer for our Bong Joon-ho series, adapted from the French graphic novel Le Transpersonnage. Man, I love that movie.
We had our 2-part 1939 series that included adaptations like Gone with the Wind, Ninotchka, The Women, and The Hound of the Baskervilles.
A number of those 1939 movies, like Goodbye, Mr. Chips, also tied into our recent 1940 Academy Award Best Picture nominee series.
Our naughty children horror series had creepy adaptations like The Bad Seed, Village of the Damned, The Innocents, and Children of the Corn.
For our Hayao Miyazaki series, we talked about his take on Lupin III with the Castle of Cagliostro, plus his own The Wind Rises.
Some great listener choice picks too, Viridiana and The Great Escape.
And for our David Mamet Wright series, The Verdict, The Untouchables, and Glengarry Glen Ross.
Plus, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang from our Shane Black series, adapted from Brett Halliday's novel, Bodies Are Where You Find Them.
Dive into the sources for all of these at thenextreel.com/originals.
Every book you buy helps support the show. Check out thenextreel.com/originals today and find your next read.